So we're now going to hear some exciting operational results in terms of diesel and carbon savings from a milestone project in Namibia. And we have two presenters for this case study. It's my pleasure to introduce Mark Daw. Mark is the Managing Director and Country Manager, Namibia for B2 Gold. And joining Mark to present this project is Rob Schufner. And Rob is Microgrids and Renewables Commercial Manager for Caterpillar.
Also from a different climate. It's rather hot where we are in Namibia at the moment. This is a couple of pictures of Namibia with our new solar plant that I spoke of in December last year, 2017. It was a project at that stage. And Adrian asked me to come back and speak on the results of the solar plant. So we'll actually be giving you concrete results and speaking about the fuel savings, which is the main reason we put the plant in, as well as the CSI, we call it corporate social investment as opposed to corporate social responsibility aspects of this plant. It was mentioned by one of the speakers this morning, another very important aspect of our plant. So you can see on the left-hand side there a couple of pretty pictures of Namibia. We are actually the second least populated country in the world, officially, and that's by population density. We have 2 people per square kilometer. Greenland actually has less. It's got about 1 person per square kilometer, but it's officially not a country. And Canada is number 9, with about 4 people per square kilometer, just out of interest, a bit of useless information for your repertoire of useless information. The least populated country is Mongolia, 1 person per square kilometer. It's a wonderful country to live in, very stable economy. We actually have with us the Honorary Consul of Namibia, Honorary Walter McLean with us, and one of my senior vice presidents for government relations as well with us today. So this is our plant that we spoke of. It was just, as I say, a project in construction and feasibility last year at the same time. It's a 7 megawatt DC installed capacity. We went into partnership with Caterpillar. Rob will speak a little bit more after I've spoken about the technical aspects of the plant. Those of you that are interested in the hardware especially, Rob will be speaking about that. We've had 62,400 panels installed over a 20 hectare area. There's 7 1 megawatt transformers. We've got 250 SMA inverters, string inverters actually. 105,000 hours of injury-free work time, mainly by Namibians. One of our conditions of the construction of this plant with Caterpillar's partners, subsidiary Barloworld in Africa, was that Namibians build it. So it's not a South African-built plant or an American-built plant. We had over 120 Namibians on site building it with a couple of skilled people that came in to teach them how to do it. And so far we generated, since May, we commissioned in May this year, and it wasn't fully operational in May, so basically since June, the end of June actually, 9.1 million kilowatt hours has been generated since we started the plant. And the idea of the talk, as I spoke about last year, was to reduce the fuel consumption. We're an island producer. In other words, we have our own power production generators, HFO, 24 megawatts installed. And the idea was that we reduce our fuel consumption, which obviously is a huge cost on the mine. So we've saved so far since June 2.1 million litres of fuel. You can imagine the carbon savings as a result of that. That's up until the end of November. And the actual production results exceed the feasibility, which means I still have a job. This graph, this picture, should I say, shows you how Namibia ranks in terms of solar effectiveness, irradiance levels. The irradiance levels in Namibia are second to none, I believe. It's a very dry, hot country. People consider it to be a desert country. It's not really. We've got a lot of different climates up in the northeast. It's very tropical. A lot of rainfall in the southwest. We have the Namib Desert. In the east, we have the Kalahari Desert. And where we are, where that dot is, that's the mine pretty much in the center of Namibia, center north. We have an extremely high radiance level, about 300 to 400 millimeters of rain per year. And you can see there, what I'm showing is the average irradiance throughout the year as measured by our weather station before we built the mine. We had the sense to put in a weather station. And you can see how the irradiance levels in the yellow bars drop off in our winter as the days are shorter. Our winter, of course, is the opposite to your winters here. In May, June, July, we have the shortest days. And the black bar actually shows the actual watts per square meter that we've measured at the solar plant compared to the average that we had over the 5 years prior to the construction of the solar plant. So it matches pretty well. And here you have the irradiance figures versus the performance of the plant itself. Once again, showing that the study that we had based on our own results, not just the results of other measurements in the area, was extremely accurate. So you can read there that we've had irradiance levels of around 1,000 watts per square meter, and the yellow line shows pretty much what we've actually been producing. This is a typical picture of from our SCADA system that shows a day. In fact, I think that was in November the 8th this year, as the days have started to get longer. As we get into our summer and before the clouds started arriving, we normally have clouds arriving in Namibia after 7 months of not a single cloud in the sky. So we usually break out the beers and have a party when a cloud comes along. And you can see there that we've got a pretty vertical rise to the maximum power production as of about 9 o'clock in the morning. That's obviously because of the tilting, the tracking of the solar panels. And it shows that it's pretty stable right throughout the day, going down fairly vertically. You'll see on the right-hand side a number of kinks, and we're actually, with Rob, we're looking at exactly why that is. It has a lot to do with the tracking, the way the panels are moving, and then backtracking again a little bit. But then right at the end on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a bit of a peak, and we think that that's reflection coming off clouds in the distance, or as the sun's already set. We had a sudden increase in the irradiance levels right at the end. So on that particular day, we produced 6 megavolts AC, sorry, I beg your pardon, megawatts AC, and that amounts to 63,000 kilowatt hours, which is way more than the plant was designed to produce in that one day. So what we do typically is we shut down one of our big HFO engines. It's a 12CM32 Cat engine, 5 megawatts. And that represents the saving that we have throughout the day. So for the daylight hours, almost immediately as the sun comes up, we can shut down one of these engines. And if it weren't for the Cat, there's a bit of sales pitch here for you, Rob. If it weren't for the Cat Microgrid master controller, we would not be able to penetrate to that degree into our island grid. So on that particular day, we had, I think, 21% of our power over 24 hours came from the PV plant, and an average of around 17% throughout the year comes from the solar plant, which is a lot higher than what we were told when we went to feasibility is the maximum penetration rate that you can have into a plant. So it's exceeding our expectations on all levels. This graph shows you the fuel consumption, and you've got the millions of kilowatt hours that I was speaking about that we've produced since the commissioning of the plant. 9.1 million hours compared to 8.8 on the feasibility study. We've reduced the HFO consumption by 2.07 million litres up to the end of November, compared to 2.05, very close to the feasibility study, so our calculations are pretty good. And on average, we've saved 17% of the power, which is very, very significant. I'd like to say that one of the comments this morning, very interesting comment about the IPP versus the PPA arrangement. And for us, the IPP definitely works. I know there are a lot of people that are trying to sell PPAs here, so forgive me for saying this. I think there's a very strong case to be made for capitalizing on a solar plant right at the beginning of a mine's life, because somebody else mentioned the fact that you can lower your cutoff grade, and that's absolutely correct, that is right. The second thing is that you get 100% of the benefit from your plant. So obviously if there's an IPP that builds a plant for you, and he sells the power to you on a PPA, he's looking to benefit from it by at least 50%, probably 75% of the benefit. goes to the IPP and through your PPA. And so with us, we get 100% of the benefit. And that's really something to consider for any of you that intend to build mines that don't have an issue with cash flow. Capital is obviously an issue. You're trying to keep it down as low as possible if you're building a mine, but I think that there's definitely a case for building it into your feasibility study. Here you can see the green is the actual savings. You've gone from, I think the figure is 37.6 million litres, a saving of 2.4 over what we would have consumed over the period up to the end of 2019. Sorry, 2.4 was up to the end of 2018. And we're up at about 4.5 million litres by the end of 2019 that we're saving, which is very significant. This graph here shows our payback period. A lot of you have been asking about the payback of the capital, $8.8 million capital we spent in the plant out of our free cash flow. And you can see there that the feasibility showed about 4.3 years payback period, where the line goes down to the x-axis, based on a fuel price of $0.67 US per litre, which it currently is. And we're pretty much on that. If one considers that our saving and our payback period are our IRR and ROI is based on fuel savings alone, that doesn't take into account the fact that you're not running your engines. So every hour of daylight hours, should I say, as long as we don't have too much cloud, you are stopping one 5 megawatt engine. And that's, if you combine that together with the fact that we have solar penetration at the rate of around 17% average per year, your return on investment is actually a lot less than 4.3 years. So we've used that conservatively in our calculations, simply by fuel savings alone. Once again, this would only have been possible had we considered just putting the PV plant in without the autonomous integration of the plant, which makes this project interesting. We could not have penetrated to that degree. It's a very high penetration rate into the local grid. So what do we do next now that we've proven that this plant is working and I've still got my job? We're looking at a grid connection. As an island producer, we're producing power quite expensively, even with the solar penetration. And so the previous speaker spoke about the fact that Eskom in South Africa is not exactly the most reliable supply of electricity. There's a problem with the coal supply that they forgot to order in time, I understand. And ultimately, they're rolling blackouts throughout South Africa. Unfortunately, Namibia gets a lot of its power from South Africa. We don't produce enough power on our own. We have one hydroelectric plant up in the north of the country and one big coal-fired plant, and that's about it. It's a very small country with 2.3 million people. So the mines are pretty much dependent upon some alternative form of power generation. If we're going to rely on Eskom, pretty soon the rolling blackouts will extend to Namibia, not just in South Africa, and we'll find ourselves without power. So this is not only an economic issue for us. This project has been really successful for two reasons, apart from the economic reason. The one, of course, is the stability of the grid. The second is that we're hedging the price of fuel for the future. So that really needs to be taken into consideration for those of you in a fairly volatile part of the world. Hedging of the price of fuel is really, really important, as is the stability of the grid. And that grid stability comes through the microgrid connection that Rob will be speaking of in a few minutes. So quite apart from the savings in terms of fuel, we also save a huge amount of carbon dioxide emissions, very important for our company. I'll tell you a bit about the company before I finish off now. The grid connection, if we could get stable power, would reduce our price of power even more than the solar connection, because we'd be able to use off-peak, peak and standard power from NamPower, from our utility, during the low demand season. During the high demand season, we could only use the off-peak and standard. We couldn't use the peak power. So that means that 9% of our power will come from our HFO. That's the black segment of the pie on the top. Only 9% will come from our HFO plants as it currently stands. However, we have a problem, as somebody in America said. Houston. The issue here is that We understand NamPower will be changing its power pricing tariff structure with high demand season, low demand season, off-peak standard and peak in order to come up with one pricing structure. And then secondly, with the estimated increase in the price of power from Eskom of 16% year on year, we have no security about the connection to the grid at this stage. So as much as we tried to float this project, one of the reasons I'm here in Vancouver, we've only recently learned since the Eskom announcements last week and the rolling blackouts this week in South Africa. I have a young boy at university who's just finished his studies at Stellenbosch in South Africa, and he said, "Dad, I can't study because there's no power." So I said, "Well, get a candle." A lot of people say, what came after the light bulb and in some parts of the world, and the answer is the candle. Anyway, so if this works, we could look at significantly improved cost savings over the PV plant alone. And we're really hoping that we can get some form of an agreement with NamPower that will allow us to connect to the grid. One of the reasons for that is that we want to pump electricity back into the grid as a post-closure option, which is really important for us and our company. So this grid connection is not looking too good at this stage, as I said. So what are we going to do? We're going to wait and see. And there's nothing much else we can do. We're hoping that by the end of the second quarter, the third quarter next year, we'll have some answer about the stability of power coming from South Africa. Very briefly, the energy storage option, we've looked at that. Many people have said to me, why didn't you put energy storage in from the beginning? You should have put a battery pack in from the beginning. And we've actually had Caterpillar in the States look at that for us because they've got the technology, and Rob might talk a little bit about that. But essentially, the study is just being completed. We came off a call last week, wasn't it, Rob? And on the call, they decided that they couldn't justify the installation of a battery pack purely from the point of view of trying to override the periods when we have cloud coverage and the power generation reduces slightly. So we've looked at the cost benefit of always running that one 5 megawatt engine because of the battery pack. I think we had two times 1.9 megawatt battery packs in containers, containerized battery packs you just park at the plant. But at this stage, despite the fact that CAT cut their profit margins as low as they possibly could, they couldn't make it work for us. So I'm told that they'll try and make it work next year, so we might indeed go for storage. Storage is not as simple as it seems. It's not as profitable as it seems, but it is getting cheaper, we understand. So this is the CAT energy storage solution. Once again, the simulated cost reductions are not sufficient for us to go for that part of the project. That's phase 2.5. Phase 3 would be to expand the plant from 7 megawatts to another 7, so 14 megawatts. One of the questions that I had for the CAT technical team last week was, when we were on this call, what if we try and penetrate with 14 megawatts, which is essentially what our plant uses every 40 megawatt hours, every hour of every day, including the night. And they said that there's no way they can offer us that form of stability, that level of stability, without some form of it's battery pack or grid that would stabilize the power. So we're penetrating at almost 50% of our power consumption during the daylight hours with PV, and very, very significant reduction in our costs. The project is highly, highly successful. Just a bit about B2 before I forget. We've got 5 operating mines. We're the new senior miner on the block, the newest senior miner on the block. We're officially the fastest growing gold company in the world. And I think that this is a very good example of what one can do, and with real concrete results, with a bit of innovation. So we're looking at it with our other mines at the moment. We have a very big mine in Mali, and that feasibility is progressing along very well. So there are a lot of learnings for our Malian mine from the mine in Namibia. Very exciting stuff. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Rob now.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon. So I'm going to talk about the product selection and the product integration as it relates to the B2 Gold facility in Otjikoto. And just quickly, people think about Caterpillar. Some people think of boots. Do we have any boots in the audience? You know, cat boots or cat machines, or maybe cat gensets. We saw some slides mentioning cat gensets here today. Less frequently do you hear people talking about cat hybrid systems, cat microgrids, cat solar. We've been doing solar or hybrid projects for 10 years. So we've had this experience incubating small projects, but we didn't launch until 2 years ago. So it's relatively new. So don't feel like you're not connected. It's just relatively new. We launched 2 years ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work our way around the wheel here, the products that we offer, just talk about the selection and how we went through that process for Otjikoto. So starting off with gensets, the traditional products, and many people don't realize the offerings that we have. And I'm not going to spend a bunch of time talking about the different, high-speed gas, medium-speed gas. I'm not going to talk about each of those. What I want to focus on is we have the full portfolio to offer. So when we sit down with Mark and talk about the opportunities, we're not trying to drive a specific type of product. We're really trying to say, okay, what's the best solution? Is it a single solution? Is it 2 or 3 of those combinations? And it varies greatly depending on fuel supply and many other factors. So each situation is unique. And so we have the ability to model that and a lot of tools to help model that and work for the long term. We also have the issue, I know multiple discussions have been about relocation and life of mine. If you see in the top there, the high-speed diesel or even the high-speed gas, a lot of containerized, relocatable solutions are available. So I know that's something that comes up. But again, this is about turbine, diesel, gas, whatever it is, the ability to just analyze and model how it would fit into a hybrid solution. So at the Otjikoto mine, the base load, as Mark mentioned, is the heavy fuel product. So they have multiple heavy fuel gensets providing that base load power. And then they have some 3,500 diesels to provide that fast response stability provider really for the mine. Same philosophy, same mentality for solar panels. So hopefully some of you saw our solar panel display that we had out here at our booth. If you haven't seen it already, come by. We've got multiple solar panel technologies, whether it's the thin film that Mark showed in the image here that has some characteristics of high energy capture, or it's shingled mono PERC, or it's straight mono PERC. We've got all top tier technologies, all able to be provided by Caterpillar with Caterpillar warranty and support from the dealer network. So again, it's bringing these pieces together, so it's not a bunch of cobbled pieces. And so for the Otjikoto site, again, we use the thin film technology. And we like that technology. I mentioned the energy capture. And maybe those that aren't familiar with solar panels, you can have 2 solar panels, the same rating on the solar panel, and they're going to produce very different kilowatt hours per year at that site, sitting right next to each other. What do you get paid for? What's the value? It's kilowatt hours. It's not the watts that's on the spec sheet that was calculated in the lab, right? So that's why we went with the thin film technology. It had better than 10% additional kilowatt hours for the same installed rating. The other point I want to mention here specifically is the low degradation over time. B2Gold is very focused on the long term. They're not just, I think you got that from Mark's talk, not just focused on today or tomorrow. They're looking at the long term. And when you have a product that you're installing that's 25-year, 30-year, 40-year life, often way beyond the life of mine, they're looking at the legacy of what B2Gold is going to be in to that community or to that country. So a big issue here with degradation and basically the output after 25, 30, 40 years. So moving to energy storage, and this is the one that seems to cause people to scratch their chins more than anything else that I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, I'll just mention what we offer. We have containerized solutions of energy storage, both for power or grid stability support, or ones that are energy-based, reduce time shifting. And within those, we have, and I show the picture here, I show lithium-ion and ultracapacitors. We still have some customers that drive and force lead-acid, but the vast majority of what we're working with now is purely lithium-ion solutions in our energy storage devices. We do have some mine customers or car shredder, high-impact industrial customers that want to have ultracapacitors mixed in with lithium-ion to help augment and support the hits and the cycles. So we do those as well. But What I really want to focus on in this is the bidirectional inverter. We have a rail group, we have electric drive machines, a lot of intellectual property related to power conversion. We make the big Priuses of the world, if you want to think of it that way. So we've got some volumes there and a lot of intellectual property and quite a few patents related to that. So we're very proud of our bidirectional inverter that we apply into that. But what's the so what? If I'm in the mining business, when do I apply energy storage? When does it make sense? And you have to run the numbers, but just a quick rule of thumb chart that I like to show and talk about. If we just talk about a base installation of diesel gensets, say 10 megawatts, 5 2-megawatt gensets. So I've got 10 megawatts of gensets, and I want to get some fuel savings. What are the knobs I can turn? Well, I can put in some energy storage to help basically provide virtual spinning reserve, right? So in the mornings, especially if I have a highly cyclical load at my site, I can bring units on later, I can drop them off sooner at night, I can run all the units that I'm running at a higher load factor and I can get significant savings. But to move up beyond that, to get into that 5 to 20% fuel savings I show there, you add solar. So you need to bring in solar, and you can add capacity. In his case, we talk about 15 to 40% of whatever that installed base was. So let's say 4 megawatts if that's the installed base. You don't need any energy storage requirement. The gensets, gas or diesel, can handle the swings that come with the clouds and everything else, so you can very easily go ahead and apply that as a technology. But to go beyond that, to go to the next phase, and this is what Mark was talking about a little bit ago, you have to add both PV and energy storage together. And so you can bring PV up to 100%, and I'll talk about an example, a different site example in a moment. So you bring it all the way up to 100%, provide that grid stability or power battery to give you that capability. And then to go beyond that, then you're adding significantly more solar, significantly more battery to be able to start time shifting. So you can capture the energy from the sun during the day, time shift it to night. And that's where we'll head. It's a matter of time and the progression over time. So what do we have at Otjikoto? As Mark mentioned, we went with in phase 1, solar installation. And we'll talk more about that in a second here. So the big part of the differentiation for being able to operate a solution like what Mark talked about and be able to shut off a genset has to do with the controls and the autonomous nature of the controls to be able to pull together the different attributes. And we have what we call the Microgrid Master Controller, MMC. And so the big thing here is it's scalable. So you can use this at a very small installation, guard security shelter, water pumping station, those types of things around a mine. But the big thing is it can integrate all the different sources and control all the other sources. So it's a level 2 controller. It's not the controller on the genset. It's not the controller on the energy storage device. It's the master controller pulling those together and communicating the full message. And so it just ensures reliable operation and makes sure you're optimizing the cost for your installation. Now, I'm not expecting to look at each row and what the different features of the different controller levels are. The point here is singularly, we've got a full suite of controls with pieces that can plug in, the CAT weather stations, the CAT smart metering, and the communication solutions to be able to pull that together. And so for the Otjikoto site, we went ahead and Mark said we want to have a solution that we can build and have multiple phases and continue to grow. So we provided a solution here. The solar field at the B2 Gold site at Otjikoto is 5 kilometers away from the powerhouse. So you've got 5-kilometer distance, so you're dealing with distance in control, not just controls. And you're also dealing with VAR management for the process. So the controller is very important to have that and be in place to be able to execute on that. So again, B2 Gold wanted to have controller options for every situation, so we have that installed for the multi-generation plan. Now to take that to the next step, so I have this autonomous system, how do I monitor it? I pull it up on my computer, look at it on my phone. We have the Cat Connect, just like we have all these machines that are running around with Cat Connect. We're tracking all the machines at the mine. Same for our hybrid solution. So if you see this site, this happens to be a snapshot from that mine. And you can see in the top left side, you can see the load there is at 12 megawatts. And you can see the gens in the lower left-hand side, and at the first box is the heavy fuel gens. So 2 of the 4 units are operating. So again, running one gen off, producing 6.1 megawatts from the heavy fuel. The diesel in the middle box is shut off at that moment, and the solar is could provide 6 megawatts, but we're providing 5.9 megawatts. We're using smart technology to manage the solar to make sure that we're helping stabilize the full mine site operation. So we're doing a little bit of clipping on that solar as part of the strategy to help it. And then what you have is you kind of have the Fitbit up in the top right corner up there. You can see over the last 24 hours, in this case, it was 21% of the load was carried by solar, and the other 79% was carried by the heavy fuel. So you're able to very quickly see the benefit of what you're providing and what you're getting. So you can toggle around in that screen. You can see the time series information, and this is the time series for the whole mine. And the yellow is the load, the green is the solar coming up, being managed. The heavy fuel plant is the white, right? As the solar is coming up, it's dropping off load and dropping a unit off. And then you can see a little dip there in late afternoon where it was a disruption, cloud fly over, and the diesel fired up quickly for a couple of minutes and then dropped back off. And again, all autonomous managed system. But I want to take a moment just to talk about going to the next step, adding energy storage. So for Mark's project, the energy storage at the moment, there's some infrastructure. You're dealing with 5 kilometers of lines and supply infrastructure beyond just the energy storage itself. So I think we're probably, as Mark mentioned, we were happy to help with the analysis, and it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And I think most of the projects we talk about, it's what it's about. It's a matter of when. So when we sit down and say, it doesn't pencil, you're not going to get the 4-year payback right now, but we think in 18 months you'll get that 4-year payback or 5-year payback. So we were able to do that based on the trends on where solar PV costs are going. We're able to do that based on where the lithium costs are going, and truthfully just some of the smart analytics as we continue to learn how to operate better and get better paybacks, better savings from each day. And so that'll continue to happen. But this is Insight. This one happens to be a much smaller 500 kilowatt load. The customer runs 300 to 500 kilowatt. They run gen off every day, so no gens during the day. It's purely running with the grid forming energy storage and the PV. And so during the day, it's all quiet, and at night the gens are running. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner, this one happens to be one where we have lithium-ion and ultracapacitors installed to support them. And in this case, the site is getting it's 44% in the last 24 hours of the load was carried by solar, as opposed to the rest being provided by the diesel plant. So again, just another example of a different site we've done. And in that case, and the load is much rattier at this site, a lot of machine processes, industrial site going on here. But what you can see is the load in yellow, ratty across the top, and you see the solar coming up in the green bar. And what you see in the blue is the diesel dropping away during the day, going off, the energy storage taking all the swings and hits and dealing with that. So what's the so what? So what? I'm a mining, I want to do something, I'm not sure what I want to do. Should I be engaging in this? Which area should I be focusing on? So I'd say, well, look at your whole portfolio, or if you're working with a mine, look at your whole portfolio. Where do I have a mine that's paying more than 10 cents per kilowatt hour, US? If you have a site that's paying more than 10 cents per kilowatt hour, there's an opportunity. Conversely, where do I have a site where I'm paying 4 cents or less per kilowatt hour, and I'm thinking about expansion? We have an opportunity. That 10 cents used to be 14 cents, it became 12 cents, it's 10 cents. It's continuing to move down. But there's lots of opportunity to go. And so if you can answer those questions, you look at your different facilities and you say, where do I have the biggest opportunity? If you can answer that question first, and then you can start saying, okay, what are my sustainability goals? What are my resiliency challenges? And just write on down the list here. And you understand also your fuels, whether that's bio or it's a gaseous coal seam opportunity or natural gas, diesel. You understand those pieces and you're in a good spot. So I'm getting the kill sign here, I think. So with that, we'll go ahead, and I want to show this quick video. Those with a good eagle eye, maybe you can spot the two gentlemen walking through the solar field here at Mark's site. Again, 62,000 solar panels. And again, we'd love to see you out at the booth and you can touch them. So thank you.